I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I think we got a fair number of things to do. One of the things we're not going to do, because John has not met his usual standard of promptness in the meeting minutes. We'll have minutes for the next meeting, so we'll have the next what we've got on the agenda this evening is essentially, after our meeting with advisory, it came to light, something I think we all knew, that the fifth bay appeared to be a major cost driver. So one of the things I want to do was, it changed things considerably from going from the $13.2 million concept to the 19.7 to 20.7 million concept. And so I wanted to spend some time and review that particular set of requirements. And I know that the chiefs and our consultants have also been sharpening their pencils a bit, which is greatly appreciated. And I want to hear about there. Then we have some additional charges from the Board of Selectmen, which we'll proceed with. But I'm going to let our friends sort of describe where they are now in the concept development.
So first of all, we had to make a couple little changes to the fourth draft. So it's really about parking. So because you'll be seeing a fourth draft, I'm just going to tell you what the changes were. So
do you have a copy of that?
Yeah, we have some extras.
Yeah, we have a couple extras, and we can also send it out electronically.
The changes stem from the last meeting and a discussion about parking and some of the other spaces, which we were tasked with the chiefs to also sharpen pencils and make sure that the right numbers. So that's what's been done.
So the first change, basically most of the changes are on page 6 on the parking needs summary. For the police department, we had 14 personal vehicles. And, I'm sorry, we had 16 before, and that's changed to 14. So personal vehicles are 14, and the fire department personal vehicles are 5. We took out the line item about shift change. We took out those cars, and we reduced the number of public parking to 25. So we had talked at the last meeting about public being able to do overflow parking at the library. So those are the changes on that page.
So it brings the total parking count
To 69. And then the other change that you might note is that we had decided that the police department needed dead record storage. So on the space needs summary for the police department, there's an item 5.7, which is dead record storage. And we've been told that that should be 240 square feet, so it's a 12 by 20 room. And then further into the report where we have the diagrams, there is a page that's called 5.7 that has the dead record storage. Essentially, as Jeff said, these are things we talked about at the last meeting. So the next
There's some other copies of this for those that are just coming in, want a copy of what we're looking at here. So I want to switch over and talk about the design options and eventually the budget, which goes along with those. We'll let talk about the detail of them, but I'll just give everybody an update as to where we are. We produced originally 6 options, and a number of them have been eliminated as we've been going along, as you all know. Currently, we are working with 3 of those 6 options, and one is really a variant. We were asked to look at ways of reusing the building we're in now, the fire station building, in a way that can, to the greatest extent possible, reuse the existing building without triggering the code required updates, which would increase the cost, but also meet the space needs program that was developed and approved by this committee. In addition to that, an alternative, which would be a new facility on this site. And both options would look at taking a sliver of land or acquiring a sliver of land from St. Mark's School, roughly about 70 feet wide, from the back property line all the way up to the street. And so both footprints of the site are essentially the same. It's just a matter of how you break up the individual buildings on the site and their ultimate cost impact and the ability of each option to meet the space needs. We did include in this package option 6, which we have been talking about all along. It takes a much greater amount of land from St. Mark's. I guess there's some understanding at this point that that may not be a viable option from them. So we are including it now just because it hasn't been, your group hasn't taken it off the table yet. But I think the real decision point for you tonight is between these other two options, which we've labeled option 2A because it takes the original option 2, modifies it a great deal, and option 4, which is largely the same as what you saw with some improvements too as well. And I'll let Ellen go through the detail.
Okay, so the first slide that you see up here or in your packet is the aerial photograph, and we've modified that by putting the yellow dotted line in that shows the 70-foot strip that is being discussed as being additional land that would come from St. Mark's. The next sheet is just the existing conditions, so if you skip over to option 2A, this is the scheme where we would look at reusing the existing fire station facility and adding one bay on it. So if you look at the diagram, you see the 70-foot property expansion on the west side of the property. We still have the circulation working the same way we did before. We have expanded entry coming up the west side. We have entry into the main building on the west side. The fire station itself is the building now, as Jeff had said, with minimal renovation so that it won't trigger a lot of expense for code upgrades. So it's still the same two-story station with one additional apparatus bay, and we've also drawn in a future fire station training tower that would be freestanding outside the building.
Your quote does not include.
Correct.
This is just something we
It's
could
a
choose to build.
placeholder for a future
Okay, understood.
possibility.
We've also put in a little bit more detail into the site plan, so you can see this time we've shown where we see the emergency management trailers being parked up at the northwest corner of the site. The retaining walls are pretty much the same, though we have added in a retaining wall near the entry to the shared public safety. So I think at this point I'm going to go through the pros and cons and tell you a little bit more about the scheme as we go through this. So one of the pros is that it has an additional apparatus bay. That's something we've discussed. While it is an additional bay, it's not quite the length that you'll see in the brand new building. It's short by 20 feet, so two of the vehicles would have to be parked outdoors. It has a clear public entry, no phasing. If you see where it says demo existing police station, you can trace the dotted lines of the existing buildings. You can see the proximity to the proposed building. Phasing is not required, and there wouldn't need to be a temporary police facility, but it will be tight. It's tight but workable. And as you can see, we've kept the septic in the same place, but we have the existing septic is about 5,000 square feet. We're essentially doubling it, almost doubling it, 4,000, so we can expand septic system, and we've done that by shortening the apron. We still have a deep enough apron for the trucks to come in and out, but it's shorter than what exists presently, 60 feet. So the cons to this is that the fire station doesn't meet the space needs that were voted on in this report. We're missing 4,000 net square feet. A lot of that is in the apparatus bay. We while we provided a standalone turnout gear room, it doesn't have the number of lockers that we had said need to be in the report. We've undersized the fire protection and training space. The kitchen is quite a bit smaller than what the new program is calling
It
for.
doesn't change, it's pretty much exactly
Yeah.
as it is.
Well, it's the same as here, but it's smaller than what.
Yeah, it doesn't meet the program, but
Doesn't meet
it's
the
exactly
program.
what it is currently.
Right. And we don't have a triage room or a watch room. They're not included. There's still be a lot of regrading at the rear of the site, extensive retaining walls. The fire personnel will need temporary housing during construction. Well, the apparatus could stay within the existing apparatus bays during construction. We still have the issue, it doesn't have strong street frontage, really no street frontage. And there would need to be an elevator because the shared public facility and the new police would be two-story spaces. And one other thing is, as you know, this building has a pitched roof, so joining this existing roof to the roof of the two-story building adjacent will be a little bit tricky. So there'll be some issues there as well.
And this has with the demolition of St. Peter's?
Yes, they both,
Yeah,
I put that on.
well, we had voted on that the last, the committee had, so that's an exception.
No, we voted that we wanted to try and avoid that.
I'm sorry, what?
I believe we said we wanted to try and avoid the demolition.
no, I think it was voted on that. I remember, we have written in our notes that it was voted on to, I know you don't have
I
official
think we
notes
voted it
yet.
wasn't supposed to be used as a public
Yeah,
safety.
well,
building.
yeah, that's
So we didn't
exactly.
vote to tear anyway.
It's not
tear it
We've
down.
never taken a position on tearing that building down.
Well,
We just
if
know
that-
what-
Maybe we have to.
If
But
that's
we
the
have to,
case,
we have to.
yeah, then both of these options would require it.
Okay.
That is the case. So if you would like to make a suggestion that we put it in a con or a pro, we're open to that.
It's a con.
Obviously.
Definitely a big con.
Okay, so we can add that to the cons list on both options. It would have to be. Okay.
I don't think the lack of street frontage is a con.
It would be a con as opposed to an ideal new building. If you were to build a new building, and that's what we always attribute the cons and pros against. If you were looking at an ideal fire station, any community, having street frontage, having public presence is an important pro for any public safety building.
I'm not gonna argue that.
Sure. Any other questions about this option before we explain the other option?
I
Or-
had a couple of questions. And just looking at this just now, I haven't really examined it too far, but is there any particular reason why we couldn't add the space that the fire department needs in this plan?
Not within, well, we were tasked to look at keeping the fire station in this facility. We're 4,000 square feet short. So when we looked at it, first of all, the apparatus bay, we didn't move any walls at all because of masonry. So we just fit spaces in.
But I think you said you're 20 feet short on a bay. Can you just make that bay 20 feet deeper in the back?
We'll trigger the,
Where
Oh,
that
the
tower
new-
area is, just make the bay 20 feet deeper. And then maybe you can put some of the other space you need in the new part of the building.
Yeah, I think to answer the first part of your question, because the idea behind option 2 is to reuse this facility, it means your residential portion of the facility is kind of where it is here, and even though we might be moving administration around within this building, putting it in a separate building complicates all the adjacencies. So you can't simply say, okay, you're going to have most of the administration here, but then you might have fire prevention in a completely different side of the building.
Yeah.
You can't have most of the residential portion in this location and then have a couple of extra dorm rooms in a completely different location. So it got to do with adjacencies and how easy it was to really break things up. Plus a good chunk of the space is really associated with the apparatus. And the only place we can put that is on the lower level, realistically. And almost the entirety of the lower level is taken up by the apparatus bay as it is, and we just filled in the spaces around it with the program that made the most sense there, but there's still quite a lot of space missing from those rooms. So most of that 4,000 square feet is not whole spaces that are missing. It's spaces that are only 2/3 or 80% of what they should be. Everything's undersized for the most part.
In the listing of the spaces that are undersized, we chose major ones, but they're not the only ones that are undersized. And there are a couple that are oversized because we didn't want to move masonry walls around on the apparatus room because that would trigger structural
Right.
issues.
And I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying if we're adding a bay, I think the bay should be adequate enough to meet at least their apparatus needs.
So the two pieces that can't fit, I believe, are command vehicles.
And we can't fit them in that bay if we make it
We
longer?
can make it longer. Obviously, that's money, but we could certainly make it longer. It probably needs to be about 50 feet longer. But then you're talking about issues with stacking vehicles in it,
Yeah.
and you really,
I think
beyond
this is-
2 vehicles deep, you really start to have problems with being able to effectively use. Go ahead, Jody.
I mean, the layout that's
Right now,
presented
Pete,
is 3, right?
the depth that we have right now, if we keep it the same, is probably about the minimum we can have with stacking vehicles. Not a lot of room in between to get from one side of the bay to the other, so that's why they were looking to extend it. If we have to stack vehicles, it needs to be a little longer so we have the room to get into it. One of the issues with putting the bay in the end of the building, like we have it is, yes, we have 5 holes to get downstairs, but not everybody uses them, so our only stairwell is at the end of the building. So our living quarters is over that end of the building, or even in the kitchen here, somebody's gonna go all the way from that end of the building down to the stairs, back to the other side of the building, potentially to get on a piece of apparatus, so. I mean, it solves the problem, but it doesn't fully solve the problem.
Put a stairway in too. I mean, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm trying to meet the needs with using the building without rebuilding the building.
Yeah.
And I
You
guess
know what I'm
that's
saying?
the challenge here, is what do you put in that's not gonna trigger that 50%? That's gonna drive the cost up.
Right,
But it's still gonna meet what we need to do, and I don't know if this really gets it.
yeah.
I would offer the simple fact that it doesn't really get you where you want to be.
And I would agree, it doesn't get us where we need to be.
What are the biggest challenges with this, besides, getting down to the apparatus, having not enough space? What are the hardest things to work on this one?
As far as the apparatus bay, the whole,
Just in general? What are your biggest challenges that will be continuing on that site?
it's the same challenge we have right now. It's the stacking of the vehicles, trying to get in, and the space needs down there for us to get in and out of the vehicles. For one, I mean, up here, we're shuffling rooms around like we've been doing right now. We're shuffling rooms around now to meet our space needs currently, and I don't see that changing very much with the layout that's going to be.
So this would just be more of the same?
Yeah, when we sat down with the chief and looked at an internal layout, we did a schematic concept layout for this floor and the lower level floor. We looked at it with the chief to determine what was sort of acceptable. That's essentially what was proposed. Administration might move into where we're sitting here. Some other spaces might get changed back there, but we had a limitation to how much floor area we really can modify, even minorly. And so the large part of the residential area couldn't get addressed because it starts to push over that threshold. It starts to, and then once you're over the threshold, the cost goes way up. And then you're pretty much into talking about the same cost as new construction. And with new construction, you get the ability to build it exactly.
And hence the reason why the kitchen's staying the same, the bathrooms are pretty much staying in the same location. Those are not movable.
How close to the threshold is this design? You know, I mean, I don't want to be like $10,000 off, and all of a sudden you hit that $10,000, and the next thing you know, we just went up to a $21 million project.
So I think
which
we can
doesn't- still
confidently-
not our needs.
I think we can say, we can confidently say that what we put together today
Square footage.
does actually accomplish the goal of staying under the threshold. But obviously, we're at a high level right now, and the next phases of design would detail that to the point that we would know exactly where we were relative to that threshold. But I can say that where we've got conceptually today, we would still be able to fly. But it severely limits the department's functionality for today, but also I think provides no expansion or future capacity, other than the one bed, which is pretty much the only capacity built into this option for a fire department.
Jeff, would you term this a Band-Aid that would have to be addressed?
It's not a bad description.
So-
for the fire department side.
Not holding you to this, but if the town were to vote on this today, in how many years do you envision that we'd have to readdress the fire department?
I'm going to kick the question back to Joe because that has to do with operationally and expansion of the department, the needs of the community, your operational needs.
It's a best case estimate. It could be 10 years, it could be 15, but certainly within the next 10 to 15 years, something's going to have to be addressed.
And did this, when you map out your apparatus that you had in the new facility, does this not allow you to add apparatus, this current design?
This allows us to add apparatus, but then we're going to be maxed out.
That additional bay is all you have, essentially, that is apparatus?
Yes.
We also have narrow bays. These bays are 2 feet narrower than what's proposed in the new building and in the addition. And the reason why I bring that up is because he doesn't have a place for turnout gear right now. They're between the trucks, and it's very, very tight there. So we have been able to give him a room for turnout gear, but it's also only 2/3 the room, the size that we thought it should be, that was programmed.
Oh, I completely think it's a huge liability, that's just my opinion.
Should we move on to option 4?
So option 4
Actually,
is,
one more question about 2A, please. The assumption under the title 2A says no additional land, but clearly there is that western strip, the same as number 4, as on 2A as is 4, correct?
right, you know what, I didn't catch that.
All right.
That was from an old, I'm sorry.
Cross out no additional
I was
land.
Yeah, it's a
looking-
title, it's
Yeah,
part of
it's
the
a
title.
typo, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the next one is an interesting idea, which is, this is all new, and it's a 2-story fire station where, because most of the square footage that's needed for the fire station is at the apparatus on the first floor, there's space on the roof of that longer apparatus bay to put some of the shared space. So actually what we did was, it's 2 stories, it's colored red and purple because the fire station's 2 stories, but part of the second floor can be shared apparatus, and then that, because of the way the land slopes, it becomes 1 story higher up on the hill. So I guess I'm basically saying it's built into the hill. It's 1 story and then 2 stories, and it means that you probably wouldn't need an elevator. So this one does meet the space needs, no phasing. We do have the same relationship of the existing Peters Annex to the new building, so it's tight but workable. The septic remains in place, though on this one, because the footprint of the new fire station is different than phase 2A, we put the new septic over to the east, which there is room in that 70-foot buffer to put that underground. We still have regrading at the rear of the site, and we still have the same number of retaining walls. We would need a temporary fire station to build this, and we still have minimal street frontage. That is basically it. The site planning is pretty similar to the other, to phase 2A. With the exception that we would be able to get all the vehicles stored indoors, we wouldn't need to put any of them outdoors.
This one, can you approximate the distance of the apron from the front of the building to the septic area?
We'll try to stick with that same 60
Yeah,
feet.
this is,
That's 60
It
feet?
may not look like that in the diagram,
Okay.
but like we usually keep 60 feet as a reasonable minimum to allow you to maneuver
Yeah.
longer pieces.
Okay, it looked like it was closer to probably 30 in this diagram,
No,
so I just
no,
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that would be our goal.
In option 4, you show the, what I guess I'm going to describe as what's on the west side of the building, the driveway on the west side of the building, which looks like it would really only be used for police. Is there some reason why why we would need to pave that area as opposed to having the police come in and out of the public access?
There's a couple of reasons. One, it does provide a secondary egress point from the backside of the building, and if there was the opportunity in an emergency for that main driveway to be clogged up with either traffic or car accident or down tree or something like that, it gives them a second way out of the site for responding vehicles. And it also prevents a little bit of a conflict where you might have public, walking to and from the main entry and police cruisers, other official vehicles coming through that same area where you may have more of a safety concern. Admittedly, that's a minor concern, but the primary one is to have that second means of exiting the site.
Okay, thank you.
Does this assume the reuse of this building?
No.
No, it's all new.
This is all new.
Yeah, and maybe one comment was not mentioned, because we haven't talked about it specifically, is no drive-through apparatus bays in this option, so I'll back in. I think if we were to talk about option 6, that's where we get to that advantage. Obviously, that may not be on the table anymore. I think this particular geometry of this site, it's very difficult to make a drive-through bay unless you really kind of break the buildings apart. And then we can sort of lose that connection to the two. So we're kind of forced into it here. That is another consideration.
You showed the infiltration in the back of the lot. Mark, did we ever run the perk tests in the back of the lot? We were going to arrange to do that.
I just saw some information today from the perk test. I haven't had a chance to take a look at it. Something came in this afternoon, so I haven't reviewed that with Karen yet.
Any other questions?
This one also requires the demolition of Peter's tanks.
Yes, yeah, for the parking. If there's no other questions, we can jump right into the cost sheet, which is the 8.5 by 11. Not bothering to talk about option 6 at this point, unless people want to. But the budget sheet, sort of another high-level view of the budget, but it is broken down. It shows you site construction, new construction, renovations, the soft costs, contingencies, and total project costs for each of the 3 options. Option 2A is 16.6 million, and a lot of that is due to the fact that the building is smaller, or combined renovation addition is smaller, so you're building less, which means you can save more. We're also factoring a smaller cost per square foot for the actual renovation of this facility, so it's cheaper to build as well. Option 4, building more, obviously in that version at the same cost per square foot in the new facility, and that option is 20.8 million. And option 6, which is same size building, is 20.1. Mainly due to the fact that you are not able, you don't have to do temporary relocation for that option.
Option 4, the previous rendition was
0.7.
20.7. I mean, I realize that we're down on the noise here.
It went up slightly, mainly because of the addition of the dead records space. It was just a mathematical function of X number of square feet times cost per square foot. So it went up a little over $100,000. It has some multipliers that add on to that, but in general terms, it's virtually the same as it was before, but for that added square footage.
I'm going to just ask a question about dead records.
police chief isn't here. What are the requirements for dead records? Do you know?
I don't know on the police side. I know there's certain records like the daily logs that we have to keep forever, and those are in paper form. Whether the state will allow us to download those and
Scan them?
and hold them is yet to be determined. But right now, they're paper forms that we have to keep. There's certain run reports that we have to keep. We have to keep fire reports forever. Again, those are in paper forms. Whether those are allowed to be scanned and kept down the road, I can't answer that. I'm going to hope that someday it will. But I can't answer for the police. I don't know what their requirements are for dead record storage.
So you don't know whether they need to be secure, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this actually was discussed at a prior meeting, and when the police chief was here, and I think he did say, similar to the fire chief, that there were definitely requirements that certain amount of his files had to be kept indefinitely, some for statutory limitations, and all of it needed to be securable.
A lot of it, Al, is 7 years. 7 years of records can be converted.
We have this issue throughout the town, because the partner's got, the King's Charter and all that stuff. And I'm wondering whether we have, one of the most prestigious records retention organizations in the world located in our town. We're in the Harvard Annex, where they have their records and archival storage. And I'm wondering whether anybody in the town has ever approached them about
We
using
have.
it. And was there progress made on that front, or?
Limited progress, yes. We do have a limited number of things there.
Is it possible to expand that?
No, it's not. It was difficult to get the limited number of things we have there.
I actually just asked the clerk that Friday, actually.
Okay.
So that was the end of our presentation, and I think before you are the two options that you asked us to look at based on the prior options, and I think this is the information we've got for you. And so I think at this point it's a fairly straightforward choice between the two options, but I'm happy to continue the discussion with questions and other concerns with these options.
One big issue here, actually in either of these is the alternative site for a fire station while during construction. Have we made any additional progress on that, Mark?
We have not. I'm not sure that the initial option it would still be available to us. So I don't know that we have an option in town in terms of storing the apparatus. That's the biggest issue.
Option 2A, just our thinking was that it is feasible, it's not ideal, but it's probably feasible to have, while this building was undergoing renovations, to have the apparatus stored in the building. Obviously when they're not working above it or things like that, with firefighters' quarters in a modular building out in front or to the side. And so there could be the storage of the apparatus in the building during the construction phase, and depending on the season that they're working, it could either be in the bay the entire day, overnight, or if it's in the summertime, it could be outside during the day while they're working in the bay and then up to the building overnight. We've done that in other projects. It's not ideal, obviously, for issues of many different issues, but it is an option, and it would save on the cost of trying to garage these things somewhere else, and you would only have to provide just the modulars, which is what is taken into account in the budget currently.
The budget does not include in the
16.6 does not include any garaging of apparatus. It's just the housing of personnel.
but the 20.85 does.
Yes, there's absolutely no way we could keep the station intact.
What's the expected, duration of construction in these?
Typically 12 to 14 months, depending on, how you slice the project up.
In your option 4, where you say you have the temporary housing for the fire station included in that price, how much did you, what was the cost that you based it on, so I'd need to add it to that 16.6, so just to give me an idea.
For the garaging
Yeah.
of it, off the top of my head, I don't remember. I can get you that number.
I'm just curious, because this has it, if it's another $1 million, you know.
It's not $1 million, it's something less than $1 million. I just don't want to give you the
Yeah,
number and be
yeah,
wrong, so
exactly.
I can get it for you.
My biggest concerns are all these options, none of them have the St. Peter's, I keep calling St. Peter's, the Peter's Annex included. I think that's gonna be a big problem politically. But that's the only way to have it.
Yeah, the difficulty with it, as we discussed in some of our earlier sessions, is that it really messes with the parking configuration and being able to actually accommodate the amount of parking on site. So if we were to keep it, my gut reaction is that everything has to move to the west,
Yeah.
realistically.
We had an option that had it
We did have options
existing,
with that.
and then we had,
Yes.
still had, what, 110 parking spaces or something, so with it there.
Right, that's
So
true.
There's no way to have it there and drop down to 70 parking spaces?
Yeah, but I still think that everything would have to move to the west to logically accommodate it with enough space between that building and the new facility to really allow it to work correctly. You can see in the diagrams how close it is to this building. I mean, it literally is right out the side window there.
It's as close as it is to this building.
Yeah. So in the option of renovating, option 2A, renovating this building, it would stay and you'd retain that driveway in between, but you lose the ability to really park effectively around where it is. And so we'd really only have the back parking, and that's not going to even get you to the 70 spaces. So we would definitely need the west side of the site to accommodate parking. And as you can see on these diagrams, we're really not using the full 70 feet. We didn't talk about it specifically, but we're anticipating half of that, 35 feet width, as a buffer between the meadow and this complex. And that is in part an accommodation to St. Mark so that they can retain that view corridor of sort of friendly neighbors. I would expect that we would need a good chunk of that for parking if we were to retain St. Peter's Annex.
I also want to add that the earlier parking versions, when you throw out the number 110, didn't include the emergency management storage. That accounts for about 15 parking spaces.
So I think it's doable. We could tweak it to make it work. We just probably would either need to use up the buffer, the planted buffer, or we need to get more space to create another buffer further over and take a chunk of that buffer and use it as parking.
If I can, just for a thought for the committee on the fire side, if you consider option 2A, we may meet the requirements that we need for today, but this is not going to meet the requirements for the fire department in the future. So if you decide to do anything with this, keep in mind that it's probably not going to be me, but someone down the road is going to be coming back to look to do some type of addition or renovation to bring the building up to where the standard needs to be in the future.
Talk to us a little bit about that. This is obviously, this is the big money driver up in the project. It appears. And if we did something along 2A, we were going to have at some point in the future the need to house some additional equipment, correct?
Possibly.
Is there a particular requirement that that equipment would be housed, at this facility, or at, in 15 years from now, would we be contemplating a substation again, for example, as a solution to that?
It's
I know it's tough.
speculation and estimations. I could say yes, but the way we're looking at projections down the future is of where the town is growing and the build out of the town, if we did a single facility in this location, it would adequately take care of the response for the entire community. So we wouldn't need to look at a substation.
And I suspect that the personnel cost that the town would incur for staffing 2 buildings would be greater than the construction cost.
Well, I think you're gonna look at staffing costs, you're gonna look at maintaining
The second building.
not just one building, but now 2 buildings, generators, heating systems, things like that. And where you're gonna put it.
Yeah.
With that said, with option 2A, can you get back to that up? Where do we expand option 2A in the future when you need 2 more apparatus bays? I mean, that's the 4 that we're renovating now are finished.
Well, this might be the appropriate time. Sort of the other thing that we had on the agenda was essentially a revisiting and a rescrubbing of the equipment requirements, because I promise you that if we don't do it, advisory will, I think. And so I'm going to suggest that, maybe we ask the chief to sort of walk us through, what equipment he thinks he needs. And I'll pull up that document if you don't mind, so I can put it up on the screen.
Well, I
There's a
think to
picture.
answer that, Al, I mean, it kind of struck me as odd last week, as all of a sudden, we had discussed this, or you had discussed this as a committee, and previously before we became non-voting members, I think we had discussed the apparatus bay and the storage issues and the needs and the requirements for that, and it seems that you don't seem to think that we need another apparatus bay at this time, and for some reason the
I haven't said
advisory,
that.
the advisory is under that impression as well. And I guess let me throw the question back out to you, is where do you draw your conclusions from that?
I don't think I've ever said that we need a new apparatus.
You
I've got
question the
this-
need for it.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to question the need for it, because that's our job. That is the function of this committee. We're going to go out and ask taxpayers for $300 to $400 a house for 20 years. And so yes, we have to do our homework. And I think the advisory committee was very clear that they at least envisioned the additional bay requirement as being sort of the major cost driver. There seems to be, if I read the politics correctly, no question that we have to build a new police station, and renovating or building a new fire station seems to be a harder shot to make. And so, I think, if you want to bring other people along, we've got to demonstrate that we've really done our homework on this subject. So that's the reason why I wanted to revisit the subject. If the rest of the committee doesn't,
Let
that's
me
okay.
redo the points that we've already talked about in this committee several times. One of them is obviously the stacking of apparatus and pulling certain pieces of frontline apparatus that we have to get out by moving fire trucks to get an ambulance out, for instance, depending on the calls that we're going. The 5th bay would help alleviate that. We don't have enough room in between apparatus with the gear rack storage and the stacking and the depth of it to move around adequately to get equipment on, to get out in a timely fashion. And it's predicated on response time and how fast we get out. And as the old term goes in the EMS world, time is muscle. And if somebody's having a heart attack, the longer that we take to get there and provide care, the more muscle dies. So those are the things that predicate the need for the apparatus bay, getting our equipment in. Right now, we have a pickup truck that sits outside, which is a $20,000, $25,000 piece of equipment that sits outside because we have no room for it. We have another vehicle that is used by fire prevention that sits outside 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When there's snowstorms, we have to go out and clear them out. We can't put them in the apparatus bay, and there's just no room for anything else to be put down there right now. So those are kind of the basic justifications, and I don't know how much more I can do to get that point across, and I can come up with some more things to show people and do some animations other than bringing them downstairs. which we'll do. We can do as a fire department. We have a lot of people that are willing to do that and show you guys that. So, I mean, that's kind of the basic premise of it. And, you know, like I said, we're here, we're a static response. So we're not on the street driving around. We respond from here. So we're predicated on getting out of the building quickly to go help people. So that's really kind of the driving factor where we're at. We did have 2 stations. We're now all consolidated into 1. So back in 2007, we were able to put an engine and an ambulance down at the substation. All that equipment moved up here. Now we've done our due diligence a little bit to kind of consolidate that with the purchase of the tower, and we've replaced 2-for-1s here and there, but we still have no room for equipment. So I don't know if that answers your question or helps you out at all, or?
I actually, after the advisory meeting, after you guys left the advisory meeting, we kept meeting on it, and we talked a bit about it. And we were talking about space needs and such, and a couple of the members were saying that we need to make sure that this is a need, not a want, for the bay. And a few others agreed that we do need it. So it's not like the advisory just saying we don't, we just want to know why. And we had talked about maybe that, and I spoke with John Butler, and I said, you know, they have a lot of equipment. And before they used to have 2 stations, and he said, do you think we can get rid of any of the equipment? And then I actually called Joe on, and I said, hey, is there anything we can get rid of? What can we do? And he let me know that they've already consolidated a few pieces of equipment and got rid of other equipment to try to make up for more space down there. With the ladder truck is also an engine now.
Mm-hmm.
The brush truck is also, you got rid of the brush truck and now it's a dual purpose rescue brush truck. Correct. I apologize, but I should know because you guys came up looking for money for them, so I should know the specs, so I apologize that I don't. So it's not like they're not trying to consolidate space. They've tried to make as much room as they can in there. So if they're running out of space, it's not for their lack of trying to consolidate. We just run out of space. So if it's a need, if you can just tell us why it's a need and not a want, that'll go a long way. And if you guys could get us electronic, what would be nice is the 4 drafts. I get those electronically and a red line for what changed in the drafts, so I can, at advisor, we can look at it and say, okay, this is what changed in each. It'd make it a lot easier to say, okay, we started here and we cut down to here, and you know, we can see where it's going. So because I know there's people that are going to go through this and
Yeah, we actually
know
have
every square inch on
We
all
didn't bring
these.
it tonight, brought it to the last meeting. We have a tracking document that'll show the various
If you
changes
could get
in the
those,
program.
I don't know if they have to go through
We'll
the
just have
selectmen,
it. That's
through
it.
the town administrator, whoever, but if we could get that
We'll do that.
electronically to the advisory committee. I think we're meeting the first week in January, so if we could have that before then, that would be great.
Absolutely. Can get
The
it
sooner the
tomorrow.
better, because that way people can start looking through it,
Yeah.
and what we can talk about, and ask the chiefs and ask whoever, you know, what, if we have any questions, we can have them in at the time.
Can get it to tomorrow.
That'd be great. But I don't believe I'm the correct channel to ask for that.
When it goes
But
to the
I
town
know,
manager.
but I
Yeah.
do know, as an advisory member, I'd like to see, I have those, but I know that other people would want those.
Yeah, I think that the challenge, you know, it kind of came out in the advisory meeting, is that, you know, the cost driver relative to the equipment bay is on the order of $7 million. And so that's a big hit. Yes, sir.
But I want to try and make it clear, it's not an extra bay costs $7 million in a perfect world.
No, it's
Here's the situation that we have, adding the 5th bay is going to cost millions of dollars. So I guess it's proving that the program's correct, that the apparatus works. That sounded like it was going to help advisory a good bit. And then it's just us agreeing to say, yeah, we need this 5th one. And it's 16 million it's not relevant really for the 5th bay. If we say we need the 5th, we need the 5th, you know, and just because the building that we have to upgrade this one so much. We got to do all the skin, we got to do all the foundation work to the new one in a little sliver of space.
Yes, sir.
Even with the addition of the 5th bay, it still leaves probably 25 to 30% short of the actual square footage requirement for what's been assessed as a need for the apparatus. So even with that, even with the exorbitant cost of that, you're still falling short of the overall need. The plan for the new building is a 92 by 90, and we're still almost 30 feet short of that. So even with that fifth bay, we haven't even come close to meeting the space needs. So for the amount of money you're gonna put into it to not even come close to achieving the goal, fundamentally doesn't seem like a really great plan at that, for what that's worth. So I mean, this is something that, even if we spent all this money, we're gonna be right back here in a few years because we're gonna be in the same situation that we're in today, is we're out of space, and we're gonna need more money then.
That's on option.
That's on option two, the 2A.
Wait, Ms. Banner.
I raised the question as well. I'm looking at the diagram that was in the draft that I had a week ago, 92 by 90. I believe that's what you're talking about this evening. And it says, this here?
Yep.
It says the future need of a command vehicle, an ambulance, and an engine. I think the question is, what is the anticipated commercial and residential growth, and when do you feel that the need for these vehicles is actually required? I mean, I understand the operation, and in order to answer that, so that we can sell it at town meeting, we need to have an anticipated date when you feel you need these vehicles for the growth anticipation of the town, whether it be commercial or residential, what the build-out is. I don't think I'm not questioning the size of the station. I'm questioning the need for the vehicles and when that need might be triggered as far as growth anticipation. So I think we need to be able to show that somehow. Thank you.
Add on to that, I'm wondering if,
Excuse me.
So I'll repeat after the chief left the advisory meeting last week, and everyone started to hone in on the bays. I just want to make sure everyone's on. I think we're construing this fifth bay as the only change in the cost between what used to be option 1 and what we're now calling option 4. The additional bay was creating additional space up here, and it was allowing the fire department to do other things. Even if the bay, let's just say they didn't need the bay, we are still constraining the operations and creating a plug-and-play model, it sounds like, of the rooms and how they're using certain offices, etc. So even once we get over the bay question, whether it's viable or not, I think we're still forgetting about there's more that goes into that additional delta that everyone keeps talking about. So as much as I do think we need to create a case for the bay, and I'm certainly in favor of it, just knowing the width between the vehicles, I think we need to stop messaging it as it's only the bay. It's a significant amount of other items up here that you're sacrificing as well.
No, understood. Yeah.
But I just think we keep talking about the bay only.
Well, I just wanted to add to what he had to say is that we only listed out 3 or 4 rooms under the bullet points, but we looked at all the rooms. The chief's office is smaller, the lieutenant's office is smaller. When you look at the space needs report and look at the files and the desks and all, remember that those are not what that scheme 2A shows, because those rooms are smaller.
Why couldn't you put some of that office space in the new building? Why are we
it's
stuck to?
It's adjacencies. Whatever we put in this part of the facility, you are limited to, in some ways, the plan that's already here. So, for instance, we're not going to be moving the dormitory area into the new part of the building. But because where you enter into the new part of the building, all that shared space has to pretty much go between here and the police facility. There's, you can't just tack on another couple of dorm rooms.
No,
The door through the back.
I mean, not to design it,
Yeah.
but
But
if you made the police
actually have to
station
get
just
down
all
to
the
that
living
level.
quarters and the cooking and the day room, and you just need the chief administrative offices could be in the new building, right? 6 inches away.
So there is a way to do it if you didn't really focus on the budget. And to say that this floor could be devoted to residential, sure, it would work, but you'd have way more residential square footage than you really would need, which means you're building a lot more in the new facility than you really have to build. So what we were trying to do is maximize the use of this building, or optimize the use of this building to meet the needs of the program as much as possible. And it really came down to adjacencies, and you know, we initially went into it with the idea that maybe some of this space can be built in the new facility, sort of just adjacent here. But when you look at the way the plan gets organized, and you really have to get down to that level of detail, which wasn't really considered as part of the study, but when you actually lay it out in plan form, there's a real limitation to what can be done outside of this building because of that adjacency, and because of a good chunk of the program need is actually in the lower level. And you can't expand that into a new facility.
Is there any way some of the bays that, for maybe the vehicles that aren't that tall, could be put in the, like where it says new shared public safety going across?
I think there's many ways to make it work differently than what we have shown. It's really just one option. I happen to think it's probably the most effective option. We could add more bays to the facility, but I think that wouldn't necessarily get them
I
really what
mean,
they
we
need
voted
be.
to support the needs
Yeah.
over and over unanimously, and yet we have a plan that's 4,000 square feet short. And you know, that, we should, to me, we shouldn't even be looking at it. We should be looking at some sort of a plan that meets that.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
I mean,
You know what I
advisory, I don't think they're looking to say, oh, we don't want to spend that money. I think they want to just see that we vetted the space needs, and which I think this committee has done. I think the last committee has done. And if that's the need, so be it, that's the need. And then go from there. So, see what happens. I don't know why we keep going back. I thought we had unanimously voted to support the space needs that the chiefs have decided and the last committee had decided, because 20 people have gone through this over the last 8 years, and everybody's coming up within a couple thousand square feet of the same amount. You know, so, I mean, if we're gonna do it, it's a 50-year project, do it right. Do it once. That's my thought. Don't keep coming back for extra money like they did at Tri. Let's just do it, be done. It's a 50-year project. Make it a 50-year project, because look at the police station. I want to be in a 100-year project, and it's still not even a police station.
Wasn't our project, yeah.
Right, you know, so I just say, if we're gonna do it once, do it right. That's my thing. So if we want to come up with a plan that doesn't fit their need just to save a buck, okay, I'm not gonna agree with it. I'd rather find a plan that if we can save some money and actually fit the program, let's do it that way.
I think what we're seeing is that we're
Backtracking.
agreeing on the space needs. It's the outfit that we have currently to shove all that into that's really doing the hindering here. So it's, do we keep that building, do we keep this building? That's really the pinch point. I mean, we can't shove everything that we need in this building in it currently. So it's the existing buildings that's killing us.
Yes, sir.
I'm John Thorburn. I live at 1 Wildwood Drive. Lived in this town for 16 years now. I served 43 years on the Western Fire Department, the last 27 as chief. And we spent 11 years rattling around the same stuff that you're rattling around now before the selectmen grabbed the bull by the horns and said, we're going to build a fire station for what we need for 50 years out. We chose to renovate an old building. And I can say, standing here today, that I supported that at that time, but in reality, we still had an old building. We wound up with an old building that was built in 1914, housed horses. Okay? It served adequately for probably 10 to 15 years. As far as apparatus goes, the technology is evolving every single day, and it seems that they just get bigger all the time. you can project to your best of your ability, but you better leave some leeway for the future, because it's going to come. There's something else that's going to come along, some new technology or whatnot. But I seriously, I would never vote to renovate this building. I think you're going to be, in the long run, you're going to be far better off to go entirely new with everything. I'm not aware of what the plans are or anything else, but I say go new with everything. You're wasting your time talking about renovating old buildings.
Okay, well, speaking of old buildings, I'd like to come back to this. So it's important that we dig in here, because this is a lot of money. It's a big tax increase. And so, you know, it's our duty to work this hard, okay? Coming back to an old building, all of the plans that we're looking at today, except for option 6, require that Peters Annex to go. Is it, we have a real fundamental decision we have to make, I think, which is, do we ask for more land on the west side to accommodate the required parking, or do we take this building down? And I think we kick this can about as far down the road as we can in terms of a plan. And there are political considerations there as well. Are there any thoughts on that subject? Yes, sir.
I'm not sure it's part of our charge to determine the destiny of that building. So I guess what I would say is we should defer to the selectmen and whatever other committees have to weigh in on that. But I think we should present a plan with it in and with it out. And I'll throw this on you, Chief, a little bit. If by chance the town would not take the Peters Annex down, could we find another place for the trailers if we needed a few extra spots? If you had a new facility in exchange?
It's gonna be hard to find spots around.
Okay. So I mean, or we have to look at land, but I don't know that we should focus on the Peters Annex other than to say, this is how many spots you lose if the Peters Annex stays up, and this is the most viable option if it comes down, because, I don't know that we have any vote or say in that. Unless I'm mistaken.
We have to, this gets to the selectmen's charge to us, which is to recommend a renovation and a new build option. And I think we've got to recommend. I don't think we can be completely a la carte about this.
Well, I think we have I think, right, if you don't care about the historical nature of the building, I think this is clearly your plan. But if someone has a historical view on the facility, then you have to present them with backup options, because this is really what we're presenting, is the building, and I think the parking, you find a way to make it work if you can get the building to work. That's just my view.
I think we should present 3 options. One, at the option 2A, which doesn't meet the space needs, but comes in budgetary kind of where we want it. I think we should have another option with the annex and one without it. How much land we'd need to take with if we kept it, and how much extra it would cost to do it. And then without, and then the selectmen can decide what they want to do with that.
One thing I just want to point out, and there's,
Wait.
go ahead, no?
He has his hand up first.
The historical already said you can get rid of
The garage.
those,
Salad.
the annexes to the annexes, so that might shrink your footprint a little bit. But you could just flip this around and put those parking spaces on the other side. We would have to take more land, but the way this is set up, the land that we'd have to take it's high right there. There's a kind of quite a bit of a hill before you get to the field. But I don't think it would be too bad if we just presented a plan that left the current police station there, with everything, all the outbuildings knocked off, and the parking over there. If they didn't like that, then it would be up to them to take the building down, but I don't think that should be on us. I think we should just leave it there.
Mark? Oh, yeah.
Just a couple of things. So, as Al had said, the board the Board of Selectmen have given the committee some directives. And as Al stated, they want two options. They want one new, and then they want one, which involves the reuse of this building in some capacity. The other piece of it is that they want both options that come to them to meet the space needs requirements, as has been voted by this committee. Now, something to think about is also our timetable. We are, about 4.5 months from town meeting. It's kind of obvious that we're going to need to have to be able to sell this, and whatever option goes forward, whatever option the selectmen decide goes forward. It's been mentioned a couple of times tonight that we continue to, kick this can down the road about the space needs pieces. And until we provide some kind of direction at this point to the consultants, they can't finish their report. If you remember in the original schedule, this was going to be an extra meeting that we hopefully wouldn't need because we'd have everything wrapped up. I don't see that we're wrapping it up tonight. And so now we're pushing everything into January, and we move further and further down the road. So I am not a voting member of the committee, so I just make the point that we need to move this thing along one direction or the other. You've seen what's happened in prior iterations of the committee. I would hope that this committee would at least, move this forward so we can try and get something done this year.
Mr. Rooney?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, to my understanding, based upon our meeting the other night, that we do not want a recommendation that does not meet the space needs. So I would not be inclined to ask for 3 recommendations. I'd ask for 2 that meet the space needs from this committee.
I think, I guess. Yes, ma'am. I'll leave.
Okay, this committee anyway. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, I'm not speaking for them. I don't know if this has been posted. I do not want a proposal sent to me having a building located on this site that restricts this site from the get-go, and even for future use. I mean, if you have approved space needs, you've approved site needs, and if we need that site, the additional land for something in the future, you've restricted it by the vote of town meeting. So I think of anything that comes before the Board of Selectmen at town meeting, we should have a real clear and defined definition that that building is not restricting the site that you're developing or any future needs of this site.
Just to really take off on both of those, but I'm reading now on purpose. The selectmen would like the current proposals narrowed to 2 proposals, one that includes an addition renovation of the current station, one that includes a new fire station. Any proposal must fully meet the space needs requirements as unanimously voted by the committee. Obviously, we'd like 2. It sounds like maybe there may only be one that fits that guidance.
I think there are 2, because neither one of them is a renovation. We did have a renovation scenario that was...
It met the space needs, but it was closer to 20 million. It was 19.
Was option 3. Oh, no, it's option 4.
Well, we're looking at 4, I thought.
I believe it was option 6. It was prior option number 3.
Yeah, it was option number 3.
Renovation without considering the restrictions of the code requirements, so we would essentially gut renovate this building. But in so doing, we would have to upgrade a lot of the infrastructure of the building, which would mean higher construction costs, virtually the same as new building. So the actual cost of that approached or was slightly less than a new facility. So at the last meeting, that was not a preference to continue with, it was a preference to find an option that more minimally renovated this building, attempting to meet the space needs. I think that was part of our report today, is that we did try to do that, and it does not meet the space needs.
I think the reality is that to meet that set of requirements from the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen did appoint us, and we did elect them, and so they give, their opinions should carry great weight. We're going to be choosing between $20 to $22 million options when all is said and done. There's no option that comes in, under 20 million in that scenario. Which was the reason I So if that's the case, the reason why I raised the issue of coming back to the requirements was I can assure you that they're going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb by advisory, and so we're going to need to make the most effective and compelling case that we can.
But I don't think anyone's scared of that.
Okay.
So.
It should be.
No, I don't know.
Well,
Seriously.
you guys,
You're asking, you should, the reason you should be is that this is a big ask, and...
I understand that, but this is, like I said, this is something, again, this is a direction, I said this the other night, Al, this is, we went to advisory, and it was almost like, give us what you want to do. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? It's not the end of the story. This is the selectmen need to make a decision on which way they want to go. And then advisory needs to get involved and devil's advocate the hell out of it to determine what, is this something we want to support or not? But this is the selectmen's project, and we need to recommend to them, this is what we think you should do, based on the direction they've given us.
Understood.
I know, and I know you don't agree with it.
You haven't heard me say that.
No, I've heard you say everything but.
Yes,
and
that's right.
So,
because I want something that we can sell. I want something that passes town meeting. That's the challenge.
I think
We're all wasting our time if we can't get something from town meeting.
But, Al, one
Yes.
thing is, I'm not gonna sell something, or try to sell something, whether it's 13, 15, or $20 million, that doesn't meet the needs of the departments. I can't ask anyone to reach, I cannot in good faith, ask anyone to reach into their pockets for a 50-year project if we know right from the get-go it's not gonna meet the department's needs. I just can't do that.
and I would reject the premise if that is a premise that's being discussed here, that $20 million is extremely hard to sell and $16 million should be fine, right? Because that delta $4 million to the average taxpayer is, I don't know, $50, right? So that's really what it comes down to as I see it. And I realize that there's a viewpoint that you start from zero and you're asking for 350 versus 400. I get that. And we don't want to talk about the school bill coming down and all that. I get all that. But I think that we may not be giving town meeting voters enough credit to understand why the ask is what it is here.
Yes, sir.
I think you start with this board being unified, this committee being unified with our message, and we go in front of advisory. That's not going to be a scary proposition. And maybe I'm underestimating it, and you probably can say I am. But I think if we're unified and we're not kind of talking at each other like we were last Monday night, and we have a unified message of this is why a fifth bay is required, and this is why that space above is required, then that message just carries to town meeting, hopefully, and hopefully the advisory board, the board of selectmen, and the voters are all on the same page. And you can say we did our homework, these are the things we did, and I like the chief's idea of animating what it's like getting into a fire truck when one's whizzing out, you got the ambulance coming out this way, and what liability concerns there would be by certain messages. So with that being said, I'm going to make a motion, because I think there's one motion to make here. And I'm going to make the motion, we move forward to recommending the board of selectmen in option 4 with the Peters Annex and without the Peters Annex. And I realize there's not a drawing in front of us with the Peters Annex, but I think we need to bring them those two options and let them push it forward from there. And I think...
Okay, so this is what I think. Okay, discussion. Floor is yours.
The floor is mine?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just not satisfied that option 2 can't be done without meeting the needs.
4,000 feet under the space needs.
No, I mean, somehow add the space needs to option 2.
Code, aren't you?
Well, it depends on how you do it. If you do it creatively, I don't think it would. And we need to think outside the box a little bit.
So I'm just to
You follow me?
bring us back into the money discussion again, but if we were to just simply take that net 4,000 square feet assume it can be just dumped into the new facility for mathematical purposes, that becomes approximately 6,000 when you add in the grossing factor of, walls and all the other stuff that has to contain that space, and you multiply it by new construction cost per square foot, you're roughly at $2.5 to $3 million add to that project cost. So the 16.6 becomes
But some of it was,
19.6.
some of it was apparatus bay, right? It was 30 feet short.
I'm just saying it's a purely mathematical exercise. You take the missing chunk, add it to the new facility, and multiply it times the actual cost of it. It turns that 16.6 into something like 19.2 or 19.3, something like that. So instead of the drastic difference in price, you're now talking about a much smaller difference in price. So I think it's possible for us to go through the exercise. I still have concerns that adjacencies and other issues would still present themselves, and I think what you're asking for is a far more detailed analysis than is what was originally requested. Not that we couldn't do it, I think it could be done, but when you step back and look at just the variance and the two costs of the proposal, if that's simply where everybody's having the sticking point, I think you're really talking about something very similar at that point. And that's at the cost of renovating an existing building rather than just building it all new. I mean, if it's $1 million, it's $1 million. I understand that. But there isn't as much of a difference.
But also with that too, you would have a renovated building that meets the space needs at about the same price, but with the possibility of unforeseen difficulties.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, you'd certainly potentially have that.
But Peter, are you asking for price-wise, or just why can't we renovate this thing and add
Yeah,
on
I mean,
and call it a day?
If what you're saying is true, why don't we have 2B that meets the space needs, and if it's the same price, it's the same price, but we have two plans. But really, we can't present 2A because it doesn't meet the space needs. We've already voted that.
I can't present it to you with any confidence that it can actually be designed that way until I've actually taken the time to figure it out. And that's, as I said, it's a much more detailed analysis because we actually have to go looking at space plans to figure out how to actually achieve the program in the shell of this building without chipping it over that 50% threshold. And then, like you were suggesting, how do we get apparatus into the upper level of the site and make them be able to do the appropriate maneuvering. It's just a far more complex design problem. I think it can be done. I'm not quite sure what the end result would look like or whether anybody would want it once we're done with it. But it's not something I can sit here today and say, yeah, it can be done and it's not hard to solve.
Let me, I've got two questions. One, the 2A, if we were to add a sixth bay, would leave that same concept in place, which would, I believe, meet the chief's total equipment requirement. Does that sound about right?
I think you're kind of, again,
I'm just asking the question.
it sounds like, we've done this here quite a bit, it sounds like you're moving the peanut under the shell. So you're addressing one need, but then there's also the other space requirements for other storage, in living space, office space, and things like that aren't getting addressed by just adding a bed.
I withdraw that one. The second one is, I know that option 6 is not viewed with as much favor by our neighbor, but it is $600,000 less, which is not a small sum of money.
Wouldn't that? Because then you don't have to move the fire
Well, I
department.
assume that's a big chunk of that cost.
That's one of the primary drivers in the cost difference.
And it is, in many respects, the least disruptive to operations.
Leaves the building built.
It does resolve the Peters Annex issue. Without asking the is there some reason why we haven't maybe dug in just a little deeper on that option?
I believe we were given guidance to shy away from it, unless I...
Well,
Well, I think going in the middle was the problem.
Well, it is a problem. You know, it's going to, it will cause St. Mark's heartburn, I suspect.
So can I try something real
Sure.
quick? So, on a variation of 6, which works because we get a nice drive-through bay, right? Can we build a new fire department out front of the site? We get 5 properly width bays that we need. Can we then move the fire department in there? Can we renovate and add on to this building and move the police department in after? And there's some space in between the 2 buildings, but maybe they can still share some systems. We still have the back of the site to deal with, or that we can work with. And Peter's Annex sits there, either used or unused, in whichever form. It's 2 separate buildings, but it kind of gets the phasing out of the way. And it puts the building up towards the front, it doesn't put it towards the side. So we're using space that we have, maybe we need a little bit more out of the meadow. But something along that line that still puts the fire department out front, keep both buildings, but we have more room to work with. And I don't want to send everybody back to the drawing board, but this is where we're at. We're at the drawing board. And it may be more price-wise than any of this, but I don't know that that's a...
In the previous committee, I do remember talking about renovation both buildings and having them separate, and there was some problems with, sharing things, being so apart. And you'd have that same, with 2 separate buildings, you'd have that same problem.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can throw a utility tunnel underground, if we can share, generator, electricity, pumps, cooling. Are we gonna have a cooling tower yet?
No, probably not cooling tower, but
Something along the...
they'll probably have individual. If that was the case, they'd probably have
Very individual.
separate
Yeah.
condensers.
And Mr. Roney? Oops.
One minute, I'll be right back.
It's price-wise, it's more expensive, but now we're solving different problems. We're solving these, which I hear are being bigger problems than money. So to leave the buildings here, reusing. I'm not a huge fan of reusing the fire department for a police department, but it would give us a chance to vacate this building and do all the structural upgrades when you're not trying to use it. So you get everything out. Fire department, they're up front, they're out of the way. Then you can get in this thing and gut reno it the way it should be. It's still going to be a lot of money, but you're spending it maybe in the right direction. Your temporary facilities are all coming into the building, right? You're not spending money to temporary locate the fire department. So just from what I heard last week, set me off on that one path.
Mark, I know you don't have a good answer for where we would put the fire department on a temporary basis. Do you have an answer for what you think that space would cost, ballpark?
What, in terms of temporary space?
Yeah.
The only temporary space that even might work would be Ted's new facility out on Route 9. That was the only site that has any availability, that is not tied up by leases, that somebody would be willing to try and do something with for 12 to 18 months. There's a couple of places that they'd have to put in larger doors, so basically defacing the entire side of a building to put in a door when you need 4 of them. And
Turning
I'm
into a
not-
fire station, that gets much.
Yeah, so they were going to reach out to the chief if in fact there was any interest to that, and I don't believe that they've reached out to the chief at all on that.
Ted's?
Yeah.
I did have a brief discussion with him, and we've talked about it a little bit, and we talked a little bit about doing Park Street, but again, to your point, Mark, the bays aren't wide enough for us to, we can do it, but we'd have to put the mirrors in every time we back a piece of equipment in there, and it's not wide enough. Plus, he has that space occupied by tenants in there, a repair shop, so.
That's gonna cost money to.
What about Willow
There was
Street?
no discussion on.
Let me,
The old New England frozen foods, they're a cold storage building now. They tore down that back building.
occupied.
Yeah.
No, the back building where the tractor trailers used to get repaired, it was empty a few years ago.
They're back in. It's National Rifles area. Locked right now.
Forward landscape.
Mr. Rooney? You were one of the parties that met with St. Mark's without divulging anything you don't want to divulge, which I'm sure you won't. If we gave option 6 a more serious look.
A renovation.
I'm sorry, it's going to take me a minute just to drag that back up here. We gave option 6, which was the building out on the meadow, a more serious consideration. How difficult a negotiation do you think? I mean, is that, because we're facing, you know, a bunch of sort of rotten choices, and not in terms of the facility, but in terms of sort of operations, and how difficult do you think that would be?
Well, as I think I said at the last meeting, I suggested to your committee that you shy away from even exploring the viability of option 6. And I said that based upon the feedback that I got directly from St. Mark's about the layout of option 6. They're very concerned about maintaining the window to the campus. And if it expands to the west, approximately 75 to 85 feet from the intersection, that's certainly going to impact their window. So I would again urge this committee not to propose option 6 as a viable option unless there's an appetite in town to try to take land by some other means.
This is certainly the sort of thing one could take land for quite reasonably, but I'm given to believe that is a prolonged process. I've never been involved.
Inexpensive. At the end of the day, you're not saving any money.
Yeah, okay. Yes, yes, sir.
Question for Jeff. With a modified version of option 6, where possibly the lot would be narrowed further away from the intersection, but elongated a little bit and essentially move, obviously you'd have to reshape it a little bit, but move the police station more to the rear, to the north of the shared public safety and the fire station, to make like an L-shaped building. Right. Would that be feasible if you had a little bit more land to the north going up and shy away from the intersection a little, or?
I mean, I'm just, spitballing here, but I think it would work. We have issues with the hill sloping up in that location. But I think you're pulling away from the corner, but you're not pulling away by much. I don't know where the line is drawn for St. Mark's about how much they're willing to accept us going towards that, and I don't know that that's been explored fully yet, but I think an L-shaped building might work, but I think the width that you gain might be 40 to 50 feet at the most.
Okay.
On the site, but then you're also stretching the site further up the hill as well, getting into the hillside, so there might be some more site costs.
Jeff, is this a one-story building?
No, it's 2-story, and option 6 is 2-story.
I was just thinking if you could add those 2 on the side to the top.
There's still septic and phasing problems to the option 6 if you were to build behind like that. So the cost might not be, the savings may not be.
No, I'm talking about putting essentially police and shared on top of fire.
Yeah,
And somehow
I think
make it all work.
It would only work
Like a 3-story building. I'm just saying it's
well,
short to narrow it.
They don't have as much of a need for the first floor, but the police definitely have a great need for first floor space, particularly detention and patrol. Patrols really ought to be on the first floor. And realistically, I just don't think a 3-story building is going to happen here in Southborough.
Was there still a motion on the table? Would you repeat your motion, so, and then
Yeah, my motion.
Yeah, just-
I actually remember.
Yeah.
So the motion was to, because our guidance from the Board of Selectmen was two-pronged, and option 2 does not meet one of those prongs, to not bring that forward to them. We can acknowledge that we considered it, but not bring it forward. So my motion was really centered around option 4, and not having this committee decide the fate of the annex, and bring forward a plan for option 4 with the annex and without, and let the Board of Selectmen decide how they want to deal with the parking situation with and without the annex, and whatever other political items that may come out of that decision.
Okay. All right. It's your motion, so it's your call. I'm going to recommend that we first have a motion which says that 2A is not viable because it does not meet the stated requirements, which is a requirement from the Board of Selectmen.
I will second that if you're making the motion.
No, I'm the chair, I shouldn't, so.
All right, I will make the motion to eliminate option 2 first,
2A.
2A, because it doesn't meet the stated space needs.
Second. Okay. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm still on Peter's idea that we can't just, can we add 5 or 6? Can we add width of bay
But you're
Out
not
front.
addressing the other space.
and get it upstairs though? Can we add the width that we need?
Isn't it, unless I'm missing something, it's a building code thing, you're gonna trigger sprinklers and everything else.
Trigger. Then,
But
Then
then
we make it happen.
then I think what we've already seen in the earlier options is that renovation equals new. So why would you ever take renovation over new at the same cost?
I don't want it either, but I don't know where we get it. I don't know where we put it. I don't know where we put new if we're not renovating this building to meet the space needs.
You've got to find a temporary space. That's the whole thing.
So, I mean, where are the big problems here? I guess, and I don't want to take away from them.
Well, I think the big problems, well, the motion right now is relative to taking 2A off the table. So let's, and then we'll come back to the other motion where I think we can talk some more about that, because we're voting on a large sum of money.
So we're taking 2A as written.
2A is written, yes.
2A is currently shown.
I'm going to currently, I got another one for you as well. Okay, all right, is there any further discussion on the motion?
Can we clarify, did the selectmen wanted an ad rent with the fire station, is that correct?
That met the requirements.
Well, that's what we've been told, that we have to do that.
Okay.
We can't just say no, we have to add that 4,000 into 2B and give them what we were told to do. That's what we were told to do, that's what I wanted to see. I don't want to see 2A, I want to see 2B that has the 4,000 in it, and explain to me why that doesn't work. But
I think it could work. I think there's big problems.
yeah, there might be some problems. There's problems with
But
every
there's solvable
but,
problems.
You know,
So again, wouldn't that be, Al's motion is still to get rid of
Not my
2A. I'm sorry. The motion is to get rid of 2A as written. You can always propose it to make a 2A2, another
2B.
version of it to meet the space needs, and propose that and the other and version 4. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
I'm just sharing my thoughts. I mean,
I agree, because that way we're meeting the criteria.
from what we have here, we only really have 4. And we're supposed to have 2 options.
So
We're supposed to have an ad rent, and, you know, we can work with this I think you can improve it to meet the space needs. I don't know what the cost to be, and I don't know what the layout to be,
So the motion.
but that's what we should be,
Well, you've actually gotten to my second motion.
yeah.
Yeah, second one. I was
Just
gonna suggest.
spitballing here, you know what I
So get
mean?
rid of the motion is to get rid of this and then have another one.
I'd like to offer one suggestion, and that is, just a reminder, option 3 is in fact a renovation of the existing station that meets the space needs, but because of that, does trigger all of the code requirements, so the cost of that is close to the cost of new construction. I don't think we have to recreate any new
Yeah.
options, I think we just
Yeah.
bring
Okay.
option
Yeah,
3
yeah,
back.
yeah. Could be as our old 3.
Hang on,
Yeah.
let me- I
Can you
can
bring that up,
probably
Al?
find it if you give me just a second. I'll put it up on there.
20.3, I think is the first one.
The old three, but you don't get this. 20. Well, exactly.
And if the configuration doesn't match exactly, obviously the design of it doesn't match exactly, but
On option 3, you have as a font does not mean building space. That was a typo.
yeah, it was a typo in the last one.
But I thought that was a positive fix. Okay, so it's gonna be section. So,
So I guess I'll add on to what I'm saying. If you would like to task us with going back and changing option 3 to look more like the best aspects of 2 and 4, just conceptually, design-wise, in terms of the site configuration, but to meet the 2 directives, which is to meet the space needs and reuse the building, I don't have a problem with doing that. It's very easy for us to do. I think the cost will be very similar, so there really won't be any surprises there.
Do we need a motion for that?
And then those will be the 2 that you can present to the...
yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
We still have the other motion.
Oh, we have to do that one?
We have two.
Okay, well, let's have 3.
Here, this is option 3. Let me just pull it up as a slide.
So the first motion, if I remember correctly, was to take 2A off the table,
As written.
as written. So we're gonna have more discussion, are we gonna vote on that?
So yeah, so I think the operative motion at the moment is to take 2A off the table, as it does not meet the selectmen's requirement that we fulfill all of the identified space needs. And so the second motion I was going to suggest we discuss is whether we believe there is an option that involves what's called the less than complete gutting of this building that could meet the space needs. But that was going to be my suggestion. But then we're getting to the main event here. But I trying to do it in an orderly fashion, if that's all right. They're your motions, so you're.
All right, so option 2A, completely off the table. I made the motion. I heard someone second.
Seconded, yeah, that's the motion that is before us. Are we ready to vote on, is there any further discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor of removing option 2A per the motion? That has carried unanimously. All right, the next motion that I would suggest we consider is the question about whether we believe there does exist a 2B, which involves a less than complete gut of this building, but that could meet the.
Do we have another motion still on the table?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And which one was that one?
That was
the
to-
motion to recommend.
Option 4 with and without the papers limits.
Do you want to
We
get
could either
that
vote
out
on that or
and
we
vote on
can wait. It's your call. It's your motion.
Well, I think we should take it off the table one way or another. Is either move it forward or, turn it, put it down and come up with another option.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we got to push
can do
this
it in either
forward.
order,
So,
that's fine.
yeah,
Okay, then.
I kind of jumped to the punchline. As you didn't,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
couldn't tell, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I'm
just put-
I'm trying to be responsive to the direction of the selectmen.
So I
Yeah.
think
So
the
that-
motion would be that we're holding off on putting it with and without the annex on it. And then we can always modify, we can amend the motion to be just one way or the other and have the option of the renovation, be it
I
3,
think-
be it a 2B, be it whatever.
I think the option 4, with or without selectmen's call, is nominally responsive to the first part of the selectmen's charge for the new facility.
So that would actually just be one option to them. And they can decide what they want to do with the annex.
I think
That's, option 4 is just pretty much one option. They can say, oh, we want to do it with the annex or without the annex. But option 4 is pretty much just one option. And then option 3 or 2B would be a second option as a rental.
it's all landscape at that point, or it's all site design at that point, because the building's
The building
gonna function the
is-
way we're
Right.
envisioning it by that.
Is there a difference in cost if we demolish versus don't demolish?
Not really. A major difference, it's gonna be a fairly small amount of money to take that building down. But what I will say is that it's a little bit more extensive in the fact when you redesign a site to accommodate the building, because I think you will need more property from St. Mark's. It's not a 70-foot expansion. You have to take a little bit more from them. So to your point, it may not be as simple as just rearranging the site. You may actually now need to say publicly, we need a little bit more from you. It's your call as to how
But
that
would be
mechanics of that can be
That would
done.
be the selectmen's purview, could be to go after the land or
Sure.
keep it without it.
But I think we can, from our side of the table, I think we'd say it's definitely doable.
Okay.
You know, I want to add, it is doable, but when you start moving the parking spaces around, they're arranged for a building entry. And so it affects where the building entry might be.
So it's doable.
Okay, is there further discussion on option 4 with and without the annex? Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor?
No,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, favor.
just confirming that, is this sending it as our 2 options to the selectmen, or is this, are we calling this one option to the, sending it?
One option to the select. This is our response to the new facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is as one of our options as the new facility that
We
we're
got a new facility with a decision that the selectmen have to make.
in regards to the annex.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody clear on what we're voting on? Okay.
So now, sorry, I'll take some.
Okay, all right. All those in favor? Okay, the next subject is, do we believe, is to request the consultants, I'm going to suggest a motion that we request the consultants to develop a 2B, which is along the lines of option 3. Option 3 was essentially the only renovation option. Yes, yes. I'm sorry. No, this is option 3.
This is our old.
This is old option 3. Didn't make it
Old
into the
option
packet,
3.
which is up on the screen.
So option 3 fits the space needs.
No, it doesn't.
That was a typo.
Oh, okay.
No, it does.
It does, yeah, that was incorrect.
Yeah, option 3 does meet the space needs with a rental.
Yes.
So I make a motion to accept option 3 as our renovation to send to the selectmen. Do I have a second?
Someone should second it. So
You can always shoot me down, but I think at least this is on the table. Now we're not reinventing the wheel.
So this particular option is an option which is essentially a gutting of this building, correct?
Correct.
A gut, you know. It also requires relocation of the fire station. And and it does require the demolition of Peter's Annex.
What? Like I said, you could shoot it down, but
And more land from.
Yeah, it does require more land from St. Mark's. Although this parking is richer than the revised parking spec.
Yeah, I would suggest that if you were to move forward with this option, we could modify it enough to eliminate the expansion to the east and treat the expansion to the west similarly as we do in the other option 4, and bring it all the way down, and we could accommodate all the parking on that same site footprint.
And if you did that, would you be able to keep the annex?
Not as the building's currently shaped. I mean, part of it actually goes into the garage that's there. I suspect that we could continue to work on it and try to avoid taking it down. I'm sure that we could come up with something. Again, like I said before, it may require more than the 70 feet, but I'm sure it's possible.
Would it be easier for you to modify this one or the 2B?
I'd rather take a shot at this one, just to keep the labeling consistent.
I know you haven't had a chance to maybe remodel it a little bit, but you're going to be around that 20.4 no matter which way you move the buildings
Largely
around.
driven by building square footage, so and then site construction to some extent. So if the site construction is going to be similar to other options and the building size is the same, it's probably going to be in the same ballpark, 20.5, somewhere around that.
So I might be stating the obvious here, but if we're just trying to respond to what the Board of Selectmen told us to do, given 2 options, I'm all in favor of pushing it forward, but I think as a taxpayer, I would never, in my right mind, vote for that, right? If you're looking at new versus, right? So it's, do we, if we do choose to push it forward, do we send option 4 forward with like a very strong, this is really where the committee thinks we're going to be at, but we're responding to your request? I think we do need to differentiate it if we did push this forward, even if they jiggle some of the buildings around a little bit.
Even if they, my thing is, even if you change option 2A around, it's still going to wind up coming in around $20 million. No matter what, it sounds like the reno is going to meet the space needs. No matter what we do, it's going to come in around $20 million. Whether it's new or reno, to meet the space needs. It doesn't sound to me like there's really any way around it to meet the space needs. So then it just comes down to, okay, is that really the space needs, which we've already decided, yes it is. That's what the last committee decided. That's what this committee decided. That's what the last chiefs, the new chiefs, everybody's coming in around the same space needs. So it's just a matter of whether we want to rebuild an old building or get a new building, which is a no-brainer. But yeah, so I mean, if 2A is still going to come in at around $20 million, we're just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like effective use of my time.
Yes, sir.
I fully agree with you. This building was built in when? 74?
78.
Yeah. This old already. When you get through with the renovations, you're going to have a building that's going to be 100 years old. You're going to have another building like over there.
Yeah. So no matter what renovation we give them, it's going to be $20 million. And I'm not going to support any $20 million project that's an old building, personally.
But it's not become part of the charge. Right?
Well,
They
we
didn't,
can
they
reply.
didn't necessarily have all this information in front of them when they made that direction.
Mr. Ernie.
Now, again, speaking just as myself and not on behalf of my board, we voted the other night to ask for two options. One was for new construction and one was for renovation. We did that in large part because we did not want to say we only wanted new construction or we only wanted renovation. We wanted to leave it to the committee to provide that guidance. Now, if you can't comply with the directive and can only give us one recommendation, then that's what we'll be faced with. But it wasn't saying that we want both of these. It was to not exclude one from your charge. Does that make sense?
Certainly some wiggle room in there. I think the big question is, do we believe, do we believe that there is a renovation option which costs, which is meaningfully different in cost from new construction,
That meets space needs.
that meets the requirements?
No.
No.
Not to throw a fly in the ointment, but you have pros and cons listed other than just cost. That may not make a difference, but you may want to consider those before you eliminate 3.
We'll say one of the cons in 3 is the width of the bays, because it's the existing building, won't change. Even if we're gutting and renovating it, the bay widths are going to stay the same.
Doesn't meet the safety needs.
But don't you think we can do something to the front of that building to head it off and rearrange the bays?
They're already pretty tight, and the widths between the bays are pretty tight, so it's not like we've got the width of the pier that we can carve into it and just get that extra width there. It's not necessarily the size of the door, it's actually the physical size of the room. So the only way to do it would be to take the room that has 4 bays, turn it into 3 bays, and try to tack on 2. And I think that's
Correct.
going way beyond.
Well, I think it's a way to do it.
Yeah. I think that if this committee does not believe that there is a renovation option that is meaningfully different from, or meaningfully better in some aspect than a new construction option, then probably the appropriate thing to do is the motion is on the floor for option 3, correct?
Yes.
Would be to vote this one down. And then we can bring up the next question. So are we, the option again is to recommend option 3
As our reno.
as our
renovation option.
responsive to the Board of Selectmen's request.
Yes.
Any further discussion on this subject? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of option 3? Okay. One yes. Two yeses.
I'll still say something to that.
Three yeses.
That way it gives them the option so we can say that we did what we were tasked to do and gave them the 2 options.
All those opposed to option 3? 3 to 4. Okay, so the motion fails. You're welcome to make a minority report if you would.
Nope, I'm good.
Let's move forward.
So then the question becomes, I think, do we believe that it is possible to do a renovation that is meaningfully better in some respect, cost being one of them, than new construction?
Until you put that last sentence on there.
What?
Until you put that last sentence on there. I think there's a renovation option that could be possible.
It was meaningfully better than new construction.
As a committee member and as a resident, and then as an architect, I'd have a hard time getting behind that statement.
Then I believe the appropriate thing for us to do is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that this committee does not believe that there is an option that calls for the renovation of the existing fire station that is superior in any meaningful respect to new construction. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we believe that? Yeah, we make the motion so we can discuss it.
I guess the reason I took your motion verbatim out is we hired consultants to bring us renovation options. We looked at different sites. No matter which way you cut it, you have logistical issues no matter what you do, new or renovation. But when you start looking at the numbers, you don't have to have any sort of math, accounting, finance backgrounds to see that you're up against the building codes. And if we're focused on this site, which we think is the best site, based on all the work that we've done this year and the prior years, I think that's why you push it forward that way and you get everyone behind it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think there's going to be a lot of resistance to not using this building. I think there's real or fabricated, but there's a lot of people in town, I think, that this is a usable building. And, you know, a lot of times, we want this thing to pass, and I've been on a committee I probably spent 100 hours on a committee before, and it didn't pass for various reasons. Some are real, some are imagined. And I think, you know, it's just my feeling that a lot of people in town like to, you know, reuse things, whether it saves them money or not. And I think that, you know, this option 2B, if we can somehow get it so it's under the building code, so we don't have to make that big expenditure. I'm not a professional in that area, but I'm sure there's some creative way of doing that. I think that the price would be lower, and I think it would be a lot acceptable to a lot more people. I'm just speaking out of experience. You know, if we can get them, the fire department, a bigger bay, put the widest trucks in that bay, make it deeper enough that they need the extra 30 feet, I can't see how that's going to cost, you know, millions and millions of dollars. And that's also going to reflect the living space above, give them the more living space that they need. I just can't see how that's $3 million. I couldn't see how it was $6 million before. I can't see how it's going to be $3 million now. So that's just my thoughts. I'll put that out there.
Chief?
We've been sitting here for quite a while, and I certainly understand the need to be fiscally responsible with this, because I agree $20 million is a lot of money. However, we're looking at several options that Dunham & Sweeney has presented to us. A lot of them have involved renovations, new construction to where we need to be. I don't have an opinion either way, whether we do a renovation and keep this building or build all new. But I think in order to do that right, it seems to be the number that we're looking at is between 19 and 21 million. And there's no way around that. So we can argue this meeting all night long, the next meeting about renovation, new construction. I don't think that's going to get anywhere. I think you have to make that determination. Are we going to settle for an ad reno, new everything beyond this shell, or new? And maybe that's the selectmen's decision. But I think the price tag, you're going to look, it's going to be about the same.
See, what you're saying, Pete, is you'd like them to look into it to see if they can meet the space needs and have a beneficial impact in pricing as well as utilization.
I thought when I mentioned it earlier that you said you could add another 30 feet on that bay and you're more than likely to be under the 50% threshold.
But that didn't address all the space needs. That just addressed base space needs.
That's what you said option 3 was, right?
Just to clarify, it was very early in the meeting, you had asked about just lengthening the bay, and since we're outside of the existing building, it doesn't have anything to do with the 50%. So we could lengthen the bay. My response to that was that it would stack vehicles up to the point that it wouldn't be really improving the conditions that they have, because the vehicles they need to get to are behind 2 or 3 other vehicles. And the chief brought up the idea that you still have the difficulty of coming down the stair and going to the opposite end of the building. I think at that point, I don't know who it was, somebody mentioned adding a stair.
Yeah, that was right.
And so, you know, I don't have a problem with going down that road, but I think to the chief's point, that road leads to a cost that's very similar to the other options we've been talking about. And I mean, there's something to be said for exploring all options, but I think there's also a reasonableness, a point at which the committee gets to a point where they think they've explored all the reasonable options, and there's certainly more out there, and we can keep finding them. But maybe there's not a need to keep exploring others. Because I think to really meet the space needs, you would have to do more than just tweak option 2A a little bit. I think a lot of that 4,000 square feet has to get back in the building somehow. And to really meet the adjacencies that that space needs requires would probably mean taking more of the space out of the second floor and putting it into the new facility, which is going to grow that facility. And then you may end up with a second floor here that may be bigger than what you really need because of the way that the exact amount of space that you have that you're willing to live with on this floor. I made an extreme example, which was if it's all living space, you know, you certainly don't need the second floor all living space, but that would meet the space needs. It just means all the administration would be in the new facility, adding to the cost of that building. So as an architect, I'm trying to be responsible to your budget and also responsible to the space needs. And at a certain point, you've got to pick one. And I think what we've been trying to do is with option 2 is straddle that line as tightly as possible. And I think we just got to the point where we're kind of at the end of that path. Any of the options really put us over to one side or the other. We're either not meeting the space needs, but getting a cheaper building, or reusing a building, or now meeting the space needs, but got a cost that doesn't fall into the line.
And the direction we've been given is to meet space needs.
Yeah, like I've said, Board of Selectmen are elected leaders. And even if I don't like it, they've given us direction, and I think it's appropriate for us to receive it since they appointed us. That certainly informs my vote.
Are we under contract to, are we all done with them at this point? Or can we work on this a little bit if we do some sort of a motion, give them some direction? Or how do we stand procedurally?
They've still got a few deliverables they owe us.
Final report, which is, I was going to bring that up, assuming that there was a conclusion. But if there's no conclusion yet, we've gotten to the point, I think we've progressed along to this point. If you wanted us to go back and look at more options, I think that might be an additional service to our original agreement, which we can certainly do. I think maybe the point about the timeline is a factor, because the more time we spend on more options means the less time we have as a community to understand the ones that are presented and to really.
I think if it's a matter of
for us.
weeks, not months, that the magnitude of the decision is worth a modest delay, and I've been cracking the whip to get to the end of the year. So we recommended an option which is the most expensive option, which has been placed on the table. It's $21 million when all said and done. And I think it's important to realize that my take on it is this is not a slam dunk at town meeting. And that if this doesn't pass, what we're likely to get is a police station. And, come back at this. Somebody else will come back at this in some number of years. But so, I would like to see if we could find an option where there is a meaningful difference. That meaningful difference probably is money, but perhaps there isn't one if we're going to meet the requirements. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct the architects to improve on option 2A, with their best efforts to clearly meet the square footage needs of both departments.
The recommended space needs.
Yeah, the space needs, and see if they can use their best creativity to skirt any building code that kicks in that we have to do a complete full structural renovation of the building.
There's certainly no reason why we couldn't vote on the second part of our charge, which is the renovation option, at a future meeting. We voted on the option which meets the first part of the charge. I'd certainly like to do that in an expeditious fashion.
Now,
This is a point of order. I believe the motion to just go forward with the one option because a second one is not really viable
Is
is
on.
still on the table.
Yes, so that's correct.
So you may want to dispose of that if you're going to go this way.
If it's acceptable to you, would you be willing to withdraw that motion?
No.
No? Okay. All right, so that motion is on the table, and it has been seconded, and so it does require a vote. And so the motion, which is on the table, is to respond to the Board of Selectmen by saying that we do not believe that there is a renovation option which is superior in any respect to option 4, which is what we recommend. Does that get it roughly right?
Yeah.
I think materially, you know, different or, you know, I mean, superior, I'm not sure superior is the right word.
What
Beneficial.
beneficial is the word I think we use. Yep. It must have been bad,
That's your
so you
time
rang the
limit.
bell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are we ready to vote on that one? If we vote for that, we are effectively taking renovation off the table and effectively not giving the architects a chance to take one more crack at an ad rent. If we vote against it, then we will take up Pete's motion to instruct the architects to take one more crack at an ad rent. Does that make sense?
Real quick, do you think that that is possible to have any type of benefit on 2A? I don't want to waste, I don't want to waste
Given the
your time.
requirements, no. I mean, if it has to meet the space needs and be appreciably
You don't
better in
think it'll-
terms of the
you don't
budget.
think you can do it?
No. And it's going to be the
Thank
same
you.
as
Okay.
what we've already presented.
That makes my vote a lot easier.
All those in, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 4 to 3.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, so that, I'm afraid, takes... So I believe that we have now nominally replied to the Board of Selectmen.
I just wanted,
Mark,
just ask them whether they thought they could do it or not. And if they don't think they can do it, I mean, I hate to see them chase their tail and spend time and resources on something that they know they're not going to be able to do.
The key is it has to meet both the space needs and has to be essentially cheaper than what we've already presented. And I don't think that's feasible.
I think that's a sticking point. I think there's a
Space is space.
I think there's a renovation option in here.
And I agree with it.
We've got to upgrade the building. It's doable,
It's just going to cost.
but it's not appreciably better than anything. So
Exactly.
it's doable. We can update this building and add on to it.
But it'll cost probably more than building a new one.
Take problems off the table. We can update this building and add on to it.
Exactly.
I think that's a true statement.
But is there a financial benefit to it? Probably not.
Is there a political benefit to it? Is there a land grabbing benefit to it? I mean, there's
Well,
lots of, yes, there's lots of items in here. I don't know that price is what's driving options.
What are some of the, enlighten me, what do you think some of the other benefits would be to that, to doing the reno here?
That it's not the building that we need, it's the space under it, on the land, that I think. So I think, okay, if you can't really knock the building down, then you renovate it, you know? So I think I'm not in favor of it. I'm just not willing to throw it out. I think it's doable, that you can actually renovate this building. Comes at a price, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm in favor of it either, but that's what the selectmen told us to do.
Yeah.
And people are going to want to see that option.
And I don't want to turn around
We
to the
just said we
selectmen and
didn't give them a
say,
chance to present it.
yeah, I want to turn around to the selectmen and say, no, we can't do that, because I think we can do it. Because they're not saying, look at a renovation that's cheaper than a whole new build.
Even for the sake of argument, yeah, we looked at it, it was $2 million more. We
Well,
already
that's why
paid the
I
consultant
said
to do
take-
it.
Yeah.
You know, it's about getting the project done, not necessarily what you think is right. You know, as long as it meets the space needs.
I think it's going to be tricky. I think the apparatuses, they're going to be harder to shove into a renovated building here. But it's like it's going to come at a compromise somewhere. And renovating the front of this, renovating those sizes,
It's not just the apparatus. There are many rooms in the program that are smaller than what was programmed. So are you saying if we go back to
I think
2A, you
Mike's
want...
saying that the renovation
I just want to finish my question. I just want to
would
finish
break
my
the
question.
50%.
Do you want us to, when you say meet the space needs, really meet what's in the diagrams? Really fit those things into the offices? Because right now it wouldn't. Because
Yeah.
you're constrained by windows, you're constrained by columns, constrained by doors.
Right, but constrained by money, constrained by land,
Yeah.
take constraints out, it's doable. Is it the best? Maybe not, but I think that 3 is not to be thrown away if you're looking for a renovation.
Well, I agree, that's why I proposed to put in 3, and it got voted down.
Mr. Smino.
I'm obviously only speaking for myself. I think implied in any guidance we gave is the recognition that we don't be foolish in order to comply with the letter of the guidance. You guys are discussing now a vote on a motion. You're discussing a motion that you just voted on and passed, and you're continuing to discuss it. You can conduct your business any way you like. But I think that if complying with the letter of the guidance means coming in with a renovation that costs more than brand new, we're moving into the surreal here. And what's the worst that could happen? You come back and say, you know what, we couldn't comply with your guidance. What do? We fire you, right?
Please.
It's not under penalty of perjury or prison here. I'm not being facetious. Sometimes you get your head down on the table so far, which is where we want it, that maybe we lose sight of that. So, just me.
Okay. Al, one final thought. I mean, I'm not really sure what the opposition's position is when the architect that the committee hired indicated that they could not come back with a renovation that met the space needs that would be under the number that's on option number 3. As I understand it, and again, I may be wrong, option number 3 is a renovation that meets the space needs. So, Peter, on your failed effort at your motion, you were asking them to come back with a renovation that met the space needs. Isn't that what option 3 is? And maybe I missed something, but as the architects, I'd ask you if I'm wrong in that regard.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, and I know Peter never got to make his motion, but if Peter's motion were to be made second and voted in favor, wouldn't you just present them with option 3 again?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to make sure I understood. So I just don't understand the basis of the opposition to the vote that was just taken. That's what I don't understand.
It was that appreciably better, wasn't it? Is that what threw us off? And by appreciably better, it was price?
Not necessarily the price. I mean, do you think
that
like
was
option
big.
2 modified would, I mean, if it could keep it so we didn't have to relocate the fire department while it's being done, I mean, that's a benefit. I get that. And if you thought that could be done, but it's still going to cost us the same amount as building new, it just didn't make sense to me.
All right, so I think we voted. Unless anybody wants to move to reconsider. I think the next step is to direct the architects to develop the option 4 with and without the annex, maybe moving the lines a little bit.
Was that part of, I just want to clarify, was that part of the direction in your motion? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in other words, yes, you can
I
move
just wanna
that
make
property
sure.
line if you think it appropriate.
Yeah, we just need to finish our final report, and I would say that we'd be ready with a draft of that at least by the 15th of January.
Can you be ready soon?
On January 1.
I'm not sure we can be ready much sooner. I mean, do you have a date in mind?
I don't, only because I don't have a calendar.
Let them do it right.
Yeah, well,
It's done.
Well, the question is, when do we need to present to the Board of Selectmen?
well, all right, so the first Monday in January is the 4th, and the second Monday is the 11th. Could we ask for the 11th?
You could ask, but I'm not sure I'm going to be ready with an actual complete report. Our office isn't going to be open essentially next week, so
Okay.
we don't have that week to work on it.
You're asking for the draft, right? You're
Yeah,
asking for
you
the draft of
certainly
the
use a
report.
draft. Well,
But I want it to be a complete draft as well,
Jeff-
not
Jeff wants the
poorly
draft at the
written
15th.
and missing pieces. Well, if we work backwards from the selectmen's meeting, when would you?
when is the next selectmen's
5th
meeting?
and the 19th.
And when do they have to have something for the warrant?
They've got a lot left.
I got a placeholder, but the warrant's closed. So, but I have a placeholder identified for that, so.
The, I guess it would look like the 19th would be the, I'm not going to be around the 19th. Why don't we tentatively say, why don't we tentatively say the 18th? And we may ask the Board of Selectmen to meet jointly with us at that time. That's possible.
That's a holiday, FYI?
Is it?
Yes.
President's Day?
18th,
No,
Sound okay,
Martin
right?
Luther King Day.
Martin Luther King Day.
the 18th.
So I assume we can't meet, right? Town holiday?
Could, but it would be highly impolitic. Is there any meaningful business we need to do between now and your generation of a final report?
No.
The draft.
I would submit my draft for review, and you could present any comments. We don't necessarily have to meet to do that.
This committee would have to meet. We can only submit 2 comments as a committee.
Okay.
Unless we post it, we can't even email each other about it, so.
When do you think you would have a draft?
Well, the 15th I'd like the 15th. I could probably get you a draft as early as the 13th. I mean, that'd be a Wednesday. It'd give us a week and a half to work on it.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that this committee meet on the 18th, review the draft.
We can't.
I'm sorry.
Let's meet on the 14th.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can meet on the 14th. Okay.
And the goal is to make a presentation on the 19th? Or does that not work for you?
That doesn't work for me, but I'm not sure I'm absolutely necessary for that process. Why don't we meet on the 14th, and let's, we may well want to meet jointly with the Board of Selectmen on the 14th. We'll figure out where we're going to meet.
So that's our draft review. And we're essentially getting their draft and reviewing it. And what comes out of that, the
Yeah.
final review is what we're giving to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah,
So I don't know that we meet with them with the draft.
yeah, you're right.
We gotta,
Okay.
we gotta swallow the draft a little bit.
Yeah.
A
Let
lot
me
of
check
it.
my schedule, which I don't have with me here, but I've got a trade show I think I'm going to it that week.
Because the next Board of Selectmen has the second that you could
That's
make it to.
getting late.
Yeah.
I mean, then it's, we review the draft 13th, 14th, and we ship it off to the, if we have 2 minor tweaks on the 15th,
Yeah.
then
Let me check my
15th.
schedule and then I will communicate possible dates to the committee. Okay?
Sounds good.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Let's do it.
Second.
All those in favor?